If that's Kraken hockey, then sign me up for a double dose.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where we bring you your favorite team every single day. Erica L. Ayala here, your host of Locked On Kraken, and was it perfect? No. Was it effective? Was it efficient? Was it showing dire desperation, just wanting the will to win? Abso-freaking-lutely. Or in the words of Dan Balsma, this was a massive game. He used that term specifically to talk about the goal that we got in the opening seconds of the game from Jaden Schwartz. And I told you yesterday, forget pretty. I want effective. I want efficient. And that Beniers line with Schwartz and Beniers-Gourde, oh my goodness, we're going to talk about it. But Schwartz scored in the opening 19 seconds of the game. How did it happen? Well, I'll tell you. Glad you asked. I'll tell you. So, off the faceoff, Matty Beniers along the walls finds the loose puck, gets it to Beniers-Gourde. Gourde finds Jaden Schwartz, who passes the puck. He just guides it in between the two Carolina defenders converging on him. So he kind of like sidestep dekes them, and he cuts the defense, goes straight in, and bangs into the boards. It was, I don't care if you think it was pretty or not, it was a goal. And I said yesterday on yesterday's episode, I feel like I'm yelling. I'm sorry. All right, let me calm down. I'm just really excited. I hope you're excited too. But I'm going to show you, that was yesterday's pregame stuff. Keys to victory. Dominate the first 20 minutes. We dominated the first 20 seconds of the game. We're going to talk about sending numbers. Defensive discipline, I think, is still an area that the Seattle Kraken, I always want to see them improve upon that area. But this was a great win for the Seattle Kraken. I'm excited about the win, but as the saying goes, you get 24 hours to enjoy or to despair, and then you have to move on. The Seattle Kraken have a pretty big test coming up against the New York Metro teams, starting with the New York Islanders. I mentioned this a few times throughout this week already, but we will be joined by Gil Martin. That is, of course, your host of Locked On Islanders and your Monday, Friday host. He co-hosts on Friday with Rachel Donner, but your Monday, Friday host of Locked On NHL. And Gil and I are going to break down this Islanders team. I feel like since the Kraken, I've said this a few times, since the Kraken have come into the league, we seem to be kind of a mirror of the Islanders in some ways, not always the ways we want, but we'll talk about that. So stay tuned for our Squadcast episode on Thursday. This was a good game, not a great game, but probably the most complete game we have seen from the Seattle Kraken this year. I want to go to Allison Lucan's instant analysis. Earned the outcome they got in this one. That's the first line in Allison's in her post-game analysis. And I love that because we've talked about it. Sometimes you can play great and lose. Sometimes you can play terrible and win. The Seattle Kraken sometimes haven't been doing either, which is kind of hard to do. But they earned this. They played the right way. They were convicted in how they wanted to play hockey, and it showed. And I love it. And it got us this win. Vince Dunn once again talked to media after this game. And that's kind of what he talked about, that this was something that they earned because of the mentality that they had. They set it in their minds, as I talked about yesterday, by any means necessary, whatever it takes, they were going to play their hockey. Here's what Vince Dunn had to say after the game.
Vince, you guys scored that goal right off the bat. I mean, what did that say just about the mindset that the team was carrying in this game?
Yeah, we talked about it before the game. We wanted to start with the lead instead of chasing the game like we have been for the past little while. So that definitely gets everyone feeling good right off the start. I think all the way through we dictated the game, which was really big for us and something that we hadn't seen enough of in the past.
You held them to 7 shots the first 2 periods. What were you guys doing to prevent them from getting the chances?
To be honest, I didn't really even notice until the end of the second there, and I look up, so I guess that's just confidence throughout the team. And I think everyone just bought into the little details that we haven't been doing lately. A lot of guys sacrifice each other for blocking shots and making things easier on Joey. I think obviously the goalies have been not struggling, but we haven't made their life any easier than it should be in the past. So I thought our puck play was really good tonight. I thought the way we possessed the puck, the spots that we put the puck, we were controlling the game that way, and I think when you do that, you can control the offensive abilities that we have on our team.
When that goal got overturned, I mean, what does that do for the team's psychology?
Yeah, that's a big relief. I think even just when they did score those other 2, I thought we responded the right way, and that's something that's really important for us. Is to stay positive when things don't go our way. Shane felt really bad after that play, and I came up and talked to him, and I said, just forget about it, just go get one, and that's exactly what we did. So, that's the kind of teammates we need to have on our team, is guys that are relentless, and when you're going through things, you got to lean on each other a little bit to pick each other up, so it's just great to see tonight.
So, I mean, again, Vince Dunn talking to us there about just that the mentality was the difference, that there were conversations had. They wanted to be able to lead in this game and not chase. And that's exactly what they did. It wasn't without ups and downs in the game. There was a goalie interference call and all of these things. As he mentioned, there was something that happened with Shane Wright where Shane was getting down and Vince and other guys just telling him, hey, let's get after it. And that right there, if you watch, I mean, after a goal celebration, you're always going to see, the most excitable, probably mostly version of a hockey player. But the excitement level was just on a different level. The Seattle Kraken were working as a team. They seemed in lockstep. They were supporting each other. And there have been times that I've hinted at some things because players have been hinting. Dan Balsma has been hinting at some things. And later on the show, we're going to talk about the line changes. I really love them, including that we put the right line back together, as in the Shane Wright line, Ellie Tolvanen and Oliver Bjorkstrand back together. And that's huge. Ellie Tolvanen gets a goal because of Bjorkstrand breakaway. Really great play there. And it's, again, something that I said that the Seattle Kraken need to do. Here's on the full screen for those listening on audio. Hello, audio listeners. Number 2 to my keys to victory on yesterday's episode, send numbers. And that was something that the Seattle Kraken were able to do. This was a good game from your Seattle Kraken. The Kraken edged out a team that shoots more pucks than any other this year in total shot volume at 51.2% in 5-on-5 play and generated 72.9% of all 5-on-5 shot quality. You heard from Vince Dunn. They were able to hold the Carolina team, to only 5 shots on goal in the first frame, 7 shots on goal in the first 40 minutes. That's another key. I said, yes, dominate the first 20 minutes, but I told you, statistically speaking, this Seattle Kraken team really needed to dominate the first 40 minutes. The Seattle Kraken had 20 shots to 7 shots in the first 40 minutes of this game. We're going to go over more instant analysis bullet points from Allison Lucan. I want you to hear from Dan Bilesma about some of the lineup changes that we saw, and we'll go over that. We're going to talk more about the Beniers line. There were some changes there. This was a good game. This was a game that this Seattle Kraken team needed. You see me, I've got the UMA hat on because we got a win. And then, of course, the big question is, how will this team respond? And I'm going to give you some insights. I joined a good friend of mine, Dexter Henry. He works for the New York Post and their partnership with SNY And I'm going to show you some of the clips of our conversation about the upcoming teams, the Islanders, the Devils, and the Rangers, all that and more on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the National Football League, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. Thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica Ayala here, your host, and your Seattle Kraken got a big win on the road against the Carolina Hurricanes. What I liked about what Dan Balsma was saying pregame, and unfortunately we didn't have those clips before I recorded yesterday's episode, but it was a lot of what we were talking about on yesterday's episode. Now, Dan Balsma was reacting to knowing how Carolina played and knowing that it was going to be a game where you had to put your big boy britches on. And that led to some changes in the lineup. I really thought his insight on why he was making some of those changes was really interesting. And he also will talk about his decision to bench Andre Burakovsky. So as Daniel Sprong and Andre Burakovsky were a healthy scratch, let's hear from Dan Balsma, then I'll give you my thoughts on the changes. Here's Dan Balsma from pregame yesterday.
Well, I think we've talked about, the turnovers and the execution with the puck, but that just means we're getting away from the mentality and the identity that which we need to play at to have successful hockey. And so we've talked about it. Guys have talked about it. It's time to put it on the ice.
With the shuffling of the lines, just what were you kind of looking in the top two combinations there with 9, 19, 13, and then 10, 37, and 17? Just what made you want to kind of put those two together?
Well, we're the last time we played Carolina and anticipating tonight, it's a big boy game. It's going to be on the walls. It's going to be in the trenches, and you have to dig in and win those battles to have success against the Hurricanes. So the line combinations are adjusting to put people in spots where they're going to be in those competitions, be in those compete, be in the wall play that is critical against this team.
Speaking of like Yanni Gordon in particular, kind of helping support Maddie there, is there any kind of dynamic between the two of them that you think could be beneficial maybe for Maddie too?
I just think the speed, the forecheck, and the hound that Yanni is a huge part of identity of his game is be beneficial with Maddie and Schwartzy there.
And what went into the decision to also scratch Andre Burakovsky?
The standard of which we expect our the players to play at and the compete. I think Andre's been working hard mentally to get out of the spot he's in and not scoring, not providing offense. But tonight will be a reset for him, and a little bit like Shane Wright having a reset with a game or a couple games. Andre just needs to get refocused back on what he does well.
So Andre Burakovsky needed to be refocused, a la what we saw from Shane Wright. If you missed it, I did yesterday's episode, and then I did a quick preview as well where I broke down the lines, but you heard Piper Shaw there asking Dan Balsma about the lines. She was asking about Jared McCann, Chandler Stevenson, who Dan Balsma had said would return to the lineup, and Brandon Tanev on that quote-unquote top line. So Tanev getting some time. He's been a player we said might be on the bubble. Of course, with the Jordan Eberle interview, maybe some of those changes have been delayed, but we do have Vince Dunn back, so we'll see what happens there. And then, of course, the Beniers line of Jaden Schwartz, Matty Beniers, and Yanni Gourde. I mentioned already that line was very impactful. Again, opening 19 seconds, the three connect on a goal, and going back to Allison Lucan's instant analysis, the new look Matty Beniers line scored 2 goals and dictated most of creating 17 shot attempts, while just allowing 7 and only giving up 1 shot on target against. This line was just really good. Top skaters, according to Game Score, Vince Dunn, Adam Larson, Beniers-Gourde-Schwartz. So that entire line were top of the Game Score. Vince Dunn's Game Score was like almost off the charts. He has been a welcome return to the Seattle Kraken team. And I alluded to it a little bit, but I think Vince Dunn was ready to be that guy. He wants to be that guy for this team. I think he is taking a really good and thoughtful or kind of there's some urgency with his approach to be a good player for this team. He has a contract extension. He's seeing some of these other contracts. Again, he kind of alluded to some things with Brandon Montour that just raised my eyebrow a little bit, not in a bad way, but you need healthy competition. And I do think that Vince Dunn wants to be that guy, and he showed what a good teammate he can be. He showed that he can be an impactful player. And when you have players like Vince Dunn, also, I don't want to overstate this or overlook this. Dan Balsma said in one of his media availabilities that the onus is on Vince to make it difficult for him to put Josh Mahura back in the lineup. Of course, Josh did slot in with the Riker Evans injury, but I really like how Dan Balsma talks about internal competition, because we've talked about it. The Seattle Kraken in some ways have been handcuffed by what has been done at the front office, and I still have a lot of concerns about that, but Dan Balsma at least seems like he's figuring out ways to get this team motivated, and Vince Dunn's return, huge for that. So I've said it before, keep the right line together. I think this new look Beniers line, early returns, we'll have to see what happens when we play the New York teams, and we'll talk about those, but specifically the Islanders coming up. But I like it. Andre Burakovsky. What version of Andre Burakovsky are we going to get when he returns to the lineup? Berkey has sounded in the past like he felt that he wasn't in a spot where he felt he should be. We talked about that leading into... I was in North Carolina, which is hilarious, but they weren't playing Carolina. I think they were getting ready to play the Rangers on that back-to-back. I'm pretty sure that was the Rangers game. Anyway, Andre Burakovsky, he's been open. He's been trying to figure some things out. Dan Balsma talked about that just now. I think that the Berkey that we saw get his first goal right around that time, he was starting to figure things out. I was okay with that. I do think there was some slippage. So am I surprised? No. I do like this, and I'm curious to see how this hopefully motivates Andre Burakovsky. I think it motivated Ty Cartier. I think it motivated Oliver Bjorkstrand. Each one of those players were just a healthy scratch one time. For Shane Wright, it was a little bit more of a development thing, in my opinion. Andre Burakovsky and Shane Wright definitely have very different, years served in the NHL situation. So Berkey's healthy scratch more in tune with perhaps what we saw with Bjorkstrand, where with Bjorkstrand, I was a bit taken off guard. I'm not so much with Andre Burakovsky, but question of the day, let me know, what did you make of the healthy scratch of Andre Burakovsky? Coming up next, I caught up with a good friend of mine, Dexter Henry. And if you're in the tri-state area, you might know Dexter, and he works to cover sports for the New York Post. And sometimes we'll have a few of us who cover mostly women's basketball. I've worked with him on women's basketball, but he knows I know hockey as well. So I got to preview the metro area games coming up. I'm going to show you a little clip of us talking about the Islanders to get you ready for tomorrow's game and for tomorrow's episode, a Squadcast, where I will be joined by Gil Martin, and we're going to talk about our teams through Thanksgiving. We know that's a big indicator, statistically speaking, in the National Hockey League. And then also what we expect, what our keys to the game will be for tomorrow's matchup at UBS Arena, which I think we're kind of like UBS and Climate Pledge are kind of cousins or maybe something, distant relatives. They were open the same year, and I think are both Oakview. Anyway, I'll ask Gil about that when we chat for tomorrow's episode of Locked On Kraken. But again, my conversation with Dexter Henry about this Islanders matchup coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken once again brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Woo! PrizePicks, I'm so excited. I almost dropped my microphone. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100x your cash all season long on PrizePicks. Now, this is what I love about PrizePicks is that it invented the flex play. Now, I've had this happen for me when I've picked some NHL picks. The flex play means you can still cash out even if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And this is really important, I think, in sports. But PrizePicks also has insurance on your lineup. So if there is an injury, your lineup will still be in play, even though one of the players perhaps on your lineup has been injured. PrizePicks also now offers Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account for this sports season. I mean, if you're going to, make some wagers, you might as well get your money on time. So we want you to download the PrizePicks app and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download PrizePicks, use promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Thanks as always for making Locked On Kraken a part of your daily destination. Erica L. Ayala here, your host, wearing our winning hats. I have some more bedazzlements that I want to add here, but let's see how this trip in the New York metro area goes. And I'm going to pack the hat. I was concerned, depending on how this game went against Carolina, I was like, do I really want to make space for this hat in my bag? Well, you dang Skippy, I'm going to do it because I'm hoping that we hear more of this. Hoping that we hear a little bit more of that. Well, I guess we won't hear it because it's the home goal sound. But in your minds, in your heart of hearts, I hope that we get some more goals, hope that this team gets some more wins, and that I get to wear the UMA hat once again. But if you want to know what I think about tomorrow's matchup, I give you a little bit of a taste in a weekend. We actually recorded this on Sunday, Dexter and I. Also, apologies. I realized after the fact that my Wi-Fi, as I sometimes like to jokingly say, my internet access was a little bit spotty, but I think the message still gets across. Here are some of the things, and I tried to put my mind in a New York metro area fans' perspective, what they might want to know about the Seattle Kraken. So here's what I had to say about the Islanders, and make sure you check the notes, the show notes, because I will have the full video where we talk about the Islanders, the Devils, and the Rangers. And I'll probably use some of these clips throughout the week. But in case you miss an episode here or there, you can check out the full video. It runs about 10 minutes, us talking about the New York metro area teams. But Dexter Henry, as the studio host, I will be joining him for some women's basketball stuff over the weekend. But here we're talking hockey, and we're talking Islanders versus Rangers.
The Seattle
And we're talking Islanders versus your Seattle Kraken.
On this trip, this is how it'll go for the Kraken playing against the New York metro area teams. They start with the Islanders on Thursday. So what do you make of this upcoming matchup between the Kraken and the Isles? And the Isles, they're a team that has been pretty consistent defensively. So how does that bode in this matchup for the Kraken going against a team that's been pretty solid defensively?
I think throughout the history of the Seattle Kraken, it's always been interesting to see how the Kraken play against the Islanders. These teams tend to kind of bobble up and down around the same area within their respective divisions. And they seem to be almost a mirror of each other. You talked about how the Islanders are a defensively sound team. This is a Seattle Kraken team that sometimes their blunders come on the defensive end. So if the Islanders can really hunker down and slow down the Seattle Kraken, they're a team that wants to play with pace in transition. If they can win those board battles, then the Islanders will put themselves in a good position. The Seattle Kraken did get the first win in their meeting earlier this year, a 3-2 win, and that came because of heroics from a blue liner, a defenseman for the Seattle Kraken. But Jamie Alexiak, although he has been one of the better defensemen and better defensive players for the Seattle Kraken, you can't expect him to bang in a goal and get a win for the Seattle Kraken team. So you're going to have to see, at least for the Kraken, somebody else step up offensively. And again, there have been defensive struggles, but when you look at these two teams, they're very comparable in a lot of areas. And I think it's going to be interesting to see which of these two teams plays better on special teams.
Yeah, that might be the difference in the game there, and the Kraken would need to see a little bit more on offense. Islanders, they can say the same thing. You're right about them, too. They've always wanted just a little bit more offensively, but they've been really solid defensively this season.
I will be in New York soon. I'm so excited. Oh, my goodness. My chair is squeaking. I leave tomorrow. We have our Squadcast episode with Gil Martin will be available tomorrow. And then on Friday, I should be reporting from New Jersey as the Seattle Kraken prepare to take on the Devils. This is going to be a good stretch. We got a great performance from our team. Not perfect. Well, it's going to be hard for them to get to perfect ever. But there were still some things that the Seattle Kraken team wants to clean up. Obviously, with Riker Evans out, that leaves some space for Josh Mahura to come into the lineup. I think he's been very solid for this team. But again, I don't think it's the worst thing in the world, even thinking about Andre Burakovsky, to get some of these players rest. They will be traveling within a controlled area, the New York metro area, where the worst thing they'll have to worry about is traffic. But they won't be putting significant miles on the body. They can focus on recovery. They can have some of those player-only meetings that seem to have happened. Coaching staff can check in. And I think this is potentially a good stretch for the Seattle Kraken. It certainly got off to a good start. But again, consistency has been an issue. It's been the bugaboo, if you will, of the Seattle Kraken. This team, not necessarily effort at all times, certainly not the potential or the skill that is on paper, but can you put it all together? After what was their probably most complete 60 minutes, I'm very curious to see how the Kraken will play against the Islanders. And again, this is a team that we tend to mirror. The Kraken, I think, in their history have always played better when playing up to opponents. I don't want this to be a gotcha game, a trap game, whatever you want to call it. The Seattle Kraken need to stay focused, especially knowing what's coming around the river bend. I told you I'd be dropping little song lyrics in there. That one might be obvious, especially since I definitely just pointed it out. But anyway, be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. Hey, let's enjoy this Kraken win. And hopefully I'll have a chance to put the hat on again while the Kraken and yours truly are on the road. Hold fast, stay true, and let's go Kraken. I'll catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.